Hello, this is Kip Wilson, and this is my AEP 855 Educational Leadership Final Assignment on article reviews dealing with educating immigrant students as well as racial inequalities in public education. The first article dealt with educating immigrant students, and below are some of the key points here. Renewed anti-immigration sentiments have raised questions about the costs of educating immigrant children. Anti-immigration movements are historically present during times of economic hardship and have significant political impact. This article in particular focused on Arizona, which has been in political upheaval for years over what is considered adequate education and accommodation for immigrant students, with special considerations given to language barriers, with many of the students, of the immigrant students, being undocumented immigrants living at or below the poverty level and having little to no English speaking skills. What is happening is the state obviously has set up mandates, funding mandates that many school districts have decided not to follow. The state has since been found in civil contempt for not funding ELL education. After being found in contempt, the state authorized an extra almost $41 million in 2006 for ELL education. However, many local districts decided that they were not going to take or to use the money, which was very surprising to me that local school districts, superintendents, administrators, and so on would be so emboldened to just go ahead and say, we're going to take this political stance. I guess I was under the impression that the job of an administrator is to make sure that each kid that shows up in their building receives a fair and public education. So even though the state has recently authorized more funding for ELL education, some school districts are refusing the state education department's mandates. This presents several leadership challenges. Number one being local politics, and I know as I get into building leadership, and something I'm already facing now on the activities side of things, is that local politics definitely play a major role in some of the decisions that are made within local school districts. So local politics need to be considered. Also, resource allocation, when you're talking about finding resources and actually how to pay for these resources to make sure that the ELL education is adequate and gets these kids on track. Sometimes that resource allocation can become difficult, and mostly because of budget considerations, especially within the given state there that was mentioned in this article, Arizona, with school districts basically refusing to use certain amounts of money on ELL education. I would say that the current school district that I work for now obviously has no problems using state mandated or federally mandated monies for those reasons. So it definitely was a surprise to hear about this. But budget considerations are something that definitely play a major role in making sure that the correct resources are in place. State and federal mandates and their implementation. To me, again, as an administrator, if the state government or the federal government, places a mandate on the public education in the school district that I'm working for, it's my job to implement that to the best of my ability. So this was obviously a direct conflict with that idea. Cultural barriers. Really, I think that there's just a lack of understanding of the cultural barriers going on. And I think that the more familiar that we are with different cultures and what might break down those barriers to help best educate immigrant children, whether documented or undocumented, legal, illegal, however you'd like to describe it, an understanding of those cultural barriers and possibly some outreach in educating those people about how the education system works and its processes would be very beneficial in improving the educational experience of these immigrant students. And one of the last leadership challenges affects on the school day. When you're talking about having a large population of your school of your student body needing ELL instruction, a lot of times that can be. I think the article here mentioned this was to be done in 4-hour blocks. This can have a significant impact on the school day, with special consideration being given to scheduling. While some students are given time for core classes and then maybe electives after that, perhaps these ELL students may not get as much time for electives because of the ELL instruction, which is obviously a little bit unequal there. So considerations definitely need to be given to scheduling and how it affects the school day. Some of my final reflections here. It is the job of the building administrator to ensure an adequate, free, and public education to all students who enter the building. Research-based strategies need to be implemented in order to ensure the best possible instruction for ELL students. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that funding simply isn't enough. That's the use of those funds. It needs to be with purpose, and that purpose needs to be research-backed in order to ensure that these kids are getting the best possible education. Scheduling considerations need to be analyzed in order to ensure that ELL students receive adequate amounts of instruction with the intention of breaking down language barriers. And also, outreach programs and personnel need to be developed to educate community groups on the local education system and its programs. At the bottom of this page, you'll find a link to the article used for the purposes of this summary. Article 2, Race in Schools. The key points here. Schools are often underprepared for cultural diversity, and many lack the resources necessary to reach all students. And this was kind of across the board. This could have been in schools that the majority of the student body is made up of minority students, and whether they be from a middle class or a maybe even lower background. A lot of times these schools are underfunded, and lack the resources necessary to put into place all of the things that needed to happen in order to effectively reach these students. Research shows that schools with mostly white staff members tend to struggle with cultural differences and the educational needs that accompany them. I guess I wasn't really surprised to hear this, but it did raise a solid point that the article touched on the idea that these suburban schools of typically white student bodies and student populations are drastically affected when middle class minorities move into the area and begin to attend the school because they are unfamiliar with backgrounds, unfamiliar with cultural differences and how to deal with different races in terms of the educational processes. There's currently no federal funding designated specifically for the education of minorities, and increased funding is definitely beneficial. However, the use of that money is critical, and consideration needs to be given to improving family conditions for minorities living in poverty. This article touched on the idea that it's obviously extremely important to worry about curriculum and materials and so on, but that special consideration needed to be given to teachers, the students themselves, and their families as a means to improving the education for minorities living in poverty. Basically saying improving family conditions will improve the educational success of these students. High stakes testing has done nothing to help in educating minority students. I guess it has done something in terms of identifying achievement gaps, but in terms of identifying solutions for those achievement gaps, the high stakes testing really has not had much of a significant or positive impact. Schools need to take initiative and be proactive in identifying ways to reach students from a variety of racial backgrounds. Some of the leadership challenges presented in this article, again, resource allocation, similar to dealing with immigrant students when you're talking about racial diversity in school, that different methods are needed, different resources are needed, different professional development is needed, in order to try to reach these students by either bettering classroom methods or even bettering an educator's understanding of a specific race that's present in the school. Again, this is accompanied by budget considerations. Is there enough professional development money there to make this happen? Is there enough money for new curriculums, new textbooks, new materials, and so on? Staffing and personnel considerations. This brought up a very good point as well. When hiring, do you give consideration to staff members, to minority applicants, I guess you might say, that might have an easier time in appealing to students from different racial backgrounds. Data analysis, I think this is huge. Like I said before, the high stakes testing has helped identify achievement gaps, but not solutions. So I think that data analysis could be important because as you nail down those achievement gaps, you can really get into the details and figure out where the shortcomings are and possibly why they're happening as a way to restructure curriculum, restructure professional development. And again, outreach programs. I know in my school we have something in the summertime for all students, up to the age of 18 or 17. they can eat lunch for free 5 days a week at the school. This is a federally funded program. In a situation like this, an outreach program needs to take place where you can publicize this and make sure that people are aware of these resources to help out. But this just goes along with everything, how the school operates, free and reduced opportunities, what is out there for people to help ease the burden, especially if they are living below the poverty line, and also to address some of the racial differences and how they're going to be handled in the schools. The reflections, I wasn't surprised to read that the middle class schools typically struggle the most with racial diversity. That's kind of one of those situations where there is so little of the diversity that as it shows up, as racial backgrounds differ, there's going to be some conflicts in instruction and academic success. I think that one of the most important things here when dealing with racial diversity in schools is knowing your demographic and planning ahead, especially if you were in a school with little racial diversity, to understand that as you see the trends change, to go ahead and plan ahead, and as a means for gathering information about how to best handle these types of situations. Reach out to other schools with similar demographics. There are other people out there working on the same problems, and it's silly to me to not reach out to other people to find out how things are being handled and how you might be able to adapt that to your own school. And also acknowledging the need for change in educating racially diverse schools and using data to help identify shortcomings and develop improvement strategies. At the bottom here you will find the link to my second article, and this concludes my presentation.